It is time to get started. So once again, my name is Aaron Magnin. I am on the technical marketing team over here at Autodesk, focusing on Fusion 360. The webinar today is going to be all about sculpting. I'm going to be talking to you about some of the new features and functionality in sculpting. We had a pretty cool one that was just released, what was it, last month now? But real quick about me, I am a mechanical engineer by training. I worked in industry for a company that did safety products, drinking fountains. Went to the University of Nevada, Reno. I've done a little bit of industrial design style work, building a stand-up paddleboard. Actually, that was kind of a fun project. But I was not using T-splines technology at that time, so it was not as easy as it could have been. But I didn't know that, and I need to get a new picture there. That's kind of like my running joke. Look at me, I'm funny. I have elbow pads, but you know, I need to get some new jokes. Anyway, the goal and focus for this webinar is basically to cover the basics of this tool. And from the poll that I ran, it sounds like a lot of you are kind of at this step. You want to get into using Fusion 360 and using sculpting within 360. So that's kind of where we're going to focus, as I mentioned there as well. We're going to get into some of the background. We're going to get into some of the new features that have come out, and basically I'm going to be working on a door handle. So I don't know if you guys saw that when I was running the polls in the background there. There was a door handle, and we'll get into that in just a moment here. But as I mentioned, for those of you who did come from a T-splines background, this is the same technology that we're using in Fusion 360. That technology was acquired by Autodesk. It's incredibly easy to use. It's very flexible. Where the name comes from actually is any of these times you have points where there's three lines coming together. That's something that other software I think struggles with. And so it gives you this added flexibility of being able to work with these complex mathematical surfaces. I'm not going to pretend to know all the technology behind it. I just know it makes designing incredibly easy and incredibly powerful in Fusion 360. So my suggestion to everyone out there who's getting into sculpting and wanting to learn the most efficient best practices is keep it simple. I can't emphasize this enough. If you get into Fusion and your first design is, I saw someone built a Tyrannosaurus Rex head. It's one of the things in the Fusion 360 gallery. Really incredible. Actually, the person who built that has a video that goes along with it that shows you kind of their steps that they went through. Really neat. I suggest you check that out. But keeping it simple doesn't just mean, don't build a really complex model to begin with. It also goes into the software as well. Like don't make a body with hundreds of faces, and don't add unnecessary detail where you don't need it. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to get into how to edit the forms and understanding all the different handles that you have access to. We're going to talk about some of the keyboard shortcuts that you'll use a lot in sculpting and in Fusion in general. These are keys and commands that you'll use quite a lot. And then we'll get into how to visualize your model better. There's actually a couple different ways that you can do it. Ways that will help you understand the curvature changes much better than with the standard view. And then also show you how you can use the double click options to kind of get to some good selections that will help you quite a lot. So here's my introduction to keep it simple. You have, when you first start a sculpting body, you can drop it in with hundreds of faces like the model on the left, but you can also do it with very few faces. I would definitely recommend using the one with fewer faces in this case, because it's going to just make it easier to control. It's going to make it easier to handle, and you can always add more details later, and you can also remove details later. But it's a lot, I don't know, I find it easier to add detail than to remove additional edges or lines or vertices and other details like that. So that's one way that you can help to keep it simple. The other way is to leverage things like symmetry. And I'm actually not going to be using symmetry during this presentation. the model that I'm going to be building just doesn't really have a lot of symmetry that I could leverage. So that's the reason for that. But it is important to know of, and it is important to know where to get to these options. So for instance, I mean, one place that you can go to add symmetry is when you're first making the body that you're going to be using in your sculpting environment. You have the ability to use this option here, the directions option. That's where you can turn on, you know, to make the body symmetric from the sketch that you make. So in this case, it's a rectangular sketch, and you can make it go, you know, equidistant in both directions, kind of like a midplane. You can also add symmetry along the major directions. So length, width, height. In this case, length was selected, and it's kind of arbitrary when you're first getting in there. I would just recommend that if you're trying to add some sort of symmetry, you don't know what Fusion might understand length to be or what orientation that is. So just click the toggle, look at the feedback. The green line indicates where that symmetry will be. You can always, you know, unclick it. You can always add it later. There are a number of different ways that you can add symmetry, and I'll show you where these are located inside the interface here. So let's jump into Fusion. I am going to be doing a lot of design within Fusion, and like I say, I'm going to be working on the model that you see here. This is just a door handle. There's actually the door itself is available here as well if you want to kind of visualize what's going on there. But on the one side, you have kind of like a really traditional I don't want to say boring handle, but you know, these things are things that these designs can be very ergonomic. You know, we want to make it really nice for the user when they're going to enter their house or wherever this door is going to be located. So on the other side here, I'm going to do a totally different door handle, and this is one of these areas, just one of the many areas where you can leverage sculpting in your designs. So to get into sculpting, I'll just verify that I'm in the correct workspace, and when I'm talking about workspaces, I'm talking about, you know, whether you're in model or patch or render, animation, etc. By default, you should be in the modeling workspace. I'm going to just go ahead and click model just to verify that I was, and I actually was. I could have told by the you know, commands that I'm presented with here in my toolbar. But to start creating a form, I'm going to just select this guy right here, create form. This, when you select it, does actually change the buttons that you see in your toolbar. So now I'm presented with all these kind of very, you know, sculpt related commands and options available. Symmetry, for instance, the one that I was showing in that last slide is just right here. But let's go ahead and start to create a really basic shape with a lot of simplicity. We want to keep it simple per what I was talking about in my presentation. So I'm going to just go ahead and use the drop down under create, and when I look at this door handle, an existing door handle, I could do this in a lot of different ways. I could use like a cylinder if I want to make it kind of a more rounded shape. I've seen people start with just spheres and just go crazy with them. I mean, you can do quite a lot of stuff with spheres. I mean, actually quad balls is the one that I think is the one that's a little bit more flexible. The spheres, as you can see, they have a lot of points at the top there, so that makes it a little bit more difficult to work with, but quad balls is a nice one to work with. I'm actually going to start with the box here. I think it's just good to start with a very, very simple option there, and generally the shape like a door handle is something similar to like a rectangular shape, we'll say. So I'm going to click box, and when I move my cursor in the graphics area, it's looking for a sketch plane, right? So the first thing that it needs to do, that you need to do, is to drop in this rectangular shape to kind of start this shape that you're after, and then you can play with the things that I was showing you that relate to symmetry and things like that as we get further into it. So in looking at this, I could drop it on the plane that was highlighted there. I could select this plane, and actually that's the one I want to use there. So I'm going to just move my cursor over here. That plane is kind of going right through the center of this model, and I'm just using the graphical interface there to kind of visualize what I'm doing. So I'm going to just click to select the plane, and then now I'm sketching, and I can use the grid to kind of shoot for a specific size. I can kind of rotate around here to get better oriented to see kind of how far out I want this thing to be. Like maybe I want it out here, but I'm not going to worry about all that too much yet because I'm going to be working with this quite a lot. You'll see that working in sculpting is a lot of just, you put your ideas on paper and then you start molding it, you start sculpting it. I was trying to use a different word there so I don't say sculpt 8,000 times during this presentation, but it is like working with clay. You can actually just drop in a shape and just start pulling and dragging and rotating and doing all kinds of stuff with it. So I'm not too worried about where this goes. I'm going to just click once to start this rectangular shape, click a second time, and look at that. It's already off center. I was drawing a center rectangular there, and you know what? That's all right. It's a little bit out in space, kind of not exactly where I want it to be, but like I say, it doesn't matter. We're going to just kind of be stretching and dragging this thing around. So I'm going to kind of click this and drag it out to get to a general like length size that I'm after. I can make it wider, I can make it skinnier. This is where you can play with adding, the number of faces along the width. You can actually click and drag on these handles, and this will help you add more and more faces. Like I say, this is a no-no. You don't want 32 faces along the height is what this orientation actually is. I'm just looking at the number over here. And like I say, that's not what I would consider the height to be, but use the on-screen handles. That's going to make it pretty easy for you to make these changes and make these manipulations. So we'll go ahead and just set that at something like 4, maybe across the length, and I'm just kind of rotating until I see the other handles. I can decrease or I can increase the number there. Maybe I just want to have one face along the width there, and then even the height I can look at, but in this case I'm okay with where that is, and I'm going to kind of shrink this down and make it a little bit smaller, just kind of match the size on the other side here. So that's good. Like I say, keep it simple. You can always add more faces later. You can always add more edges. You can always, do all kinds of stuff to this. So, and actually, I'm gonna decrease the number of edges along this length. We'll go to 3 in this case. I don't have like a set size that I'm shooting for here. I am really just kind of going off the cuff here. This isn't like pre-planned. This is all about exploration and getting these shapes, these curvature continuous shapes that sculpting will allow you to do. Okay, so I'm going to click OK, and then we're still in the sculpting environment. You can see I'm still using these tools that I'm going to be using quite a lot. And then you get into modifying it, and really the number one thing that you're going to be using when you're in the sculpting environment is this very first one under Modify, or even just the top level Modify button, is Edit Form. And through this presentation, I can go and I can click here. I can use the drop down and select the same button. I don't know why I do that though. But I'm going to be using my marking menu quite a lot. When you're in your marking menu in the sculpting environment, you get a lot of these very specific sculpting options. You'll see the one in the upper right is Edit Form, and so you'll see me go like this quite a lot, and that's going to take me into my Edit Form tool. And I would encourage everyone, if you haven't seen or used the marking menu before, I'd really recommend that you take a look at it, you explore it. It's very, very efficient and easy to use. I use it all of the time. So, okay, so just like that, I'm in my Edit Form tool. Using the drop down under Modify, I do want to just draw your attention to a couple of these. This is where you can go to insert additional edges. It's where you'll go to like crease edges. So you don't always want your bodies in the sculpting environment to be this curvature continuous look. Sometimes you do want a crease. Sometimes that helps add some distinction, some styling to your designs. So adding a crease is one way to do that, and I'll be doing that in just a moment, or at some point during this presentation. I gotta watch my time, make sure I'm not blabbing on too much. I'm going to be showing you a little bit about bridge. The new tool that I was going to show you was freezing. Freezing is pretty neat. It just came out in the last month. It's very, very handy. So those are some of the kind of modified tools, but like I say, Edit Form is where you'll spend about 85% of your time in sculpting. So get to know these tools, get to understand what they do, and you're going to be well on your way if you can understand and work your way through this Edit Form tool. So first of all, I want to show you tooltips. If you scroll over different items in this menu, it'll tell you what they do. It's going to show you the transformation modes. So I'm going to just click a face, and I'm going to make some changes here in just a moment. But when I click a face, I'm presented with a lot of different handles. These are related to things like translation. So if I wanted to grab this face and move it up, that's a translation. If I hit Control Z, I can undo that option. So that's always nice to have that. That's not how I want this handle to look. The other handles include rotation, so I could rotate that face just by clicking the kind of circular looking handles that you see there. I can scale this, and what scaling will do will shrink it. So I'm shrinking it along the length there using just the handle that you see. I can scale it to along all directions, scale it up using the corner piece there. And then also you can grab these and just kind of like slide it around wherever you want. And you can get to some shapes that you really don't want to do. You see how that one actually passes through the other existing bodies there. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z. There we go. I can hit it a couple more times. There was a couple of other changes I did there, but that's an introduction to what these handles do. And I did have a slide that I'll have to scroll through quite rapidly, but I'd rather actually show you in the software. But if you want to kind of filter through and just find a very specific type of change that you want to do, you can use these options here to only show the translation handles, to only show you the rotation handles. And this makes it easier to visualize and kind of work through. If you're a new user, it's easy. It's nicer to have kind of some simplicity in the handles, because they can get to be quite a lot in one area. So just filtering through is something that you'll definitely like to be able to use. You'll see I use multi-control quite a lot. I probably won't actually change it from here on out. But next up is coordinate spaces, and this one's pretty handy. This one's definitely worth talking about. If I click, say, like this edge, I don't always want my handles to be oriented kind of with this global orientation. Right now they're still using kind of that XYZ orientation. It's not really aligning to this edge that I'm working on. Maybe I just want to select a vertex, and again you can see it's not quite aligning to what I want to do there. Actually, let's do a change here. What I want to do is I want to make this end a little bit sharper. So maybe I want to grab this edge and kind of drag it out and do some changes to it. Or maybe we'll start with this vertex here. So once I select the vertex, if you want to actually alter the coordinate space that you're using there, instead of using world space, you can change it to the view space. And I don't use this one all that often. I mean, it really depends on the way that you're looking at this model. As I rotate, it's going to rotate those handles accordingly. Once I stop rotating, you'll see it kind of updates to reflect that. But the one that I will use oftentimes actually is this local control. So because that corner, that vertex I selected, falls on this edge, that's making it very easy to kind of drag it out in the direction that might be normal to that vertex that I've selected. So that might help me. In this case, as I was mentioning, I do want to just grab this edge and kind of drag it out to kind of make this a little bit sharper on the tip there. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so that's an introduction to some of these different coordinates that you can use. And then also you have filters, right? So you saw me selecting vertices, you saw me selecting edges, you saw me selecting entire faces or patches, I believe that we're supposed to call them. But you can leave the global control on, you can get all of them, but actually I do want to make a change here to my selection filter because I want to slide this thing kind of down, and I want to orient it kind of further down because I'm going to have a transition from this location to this existing geometry on here at some point. So right now it's just not in a good location, and in addition to that it's up a little bit too high. So using this one filter here, I'll use body filters from time to time. If I click it, you can select the entire freeform body and then just slide it around, and you can shrink it down, you can make it thinner, and this is just changing this whole body as one global change there. So I do want to kind of slide this down this way and maybe orient it a little bit differently in this direction, in the Z direction I think that is. But that looks pretty good. I think that's a good location. And then I'll go back to using the all control. it's actually pretty easy to select different items and to make those changes. So I do typically leave this on the all selection, so that's just my own personal thoughts, I guess. So from here, I do want to start to kind of make changes to this to kind of make this thing wavy. And if you want, you could actually insert an image that will help you visualize this. I mean, a lot of times people will start with like a hand sketch, and you can use that for guidance. I'm not going to be inserting a canvas in this case, but it's actually really simple to do. You just select this button, you select the face that you want to drop it on. Obviously, these pictures are 2D, so it needs to go onto one plane or another. And then you select the image from your hard drive, drop it into place, and scale it. Do a couple things. You can actually scale it per like a measurement as well. So there's some nice options there. So it's called calibrate if you're going to do something like that. Okay, so let's make some changes to this. I do want to kind of make this a little bit wavy. So you'll notice that I actually exited out of my modify command. I do that kind of a lot, just old habit, I guess. So I'm going to jump right back into it, right back into edit form. And I'm going to grab maybe a couple faces here. And you can see I can just do like a Windows style selection and get all of those faces all at once. You can do the right to left kind of selection. It'll get anything that it encompasses. If you do left to right, it will get only the ones that you fully encompass. So there are some selection shortcuts. There's also a lot of different selection methods as well. Right now I'm using the window selection. Paint selection is a pretty handy one as well. But let's get into this. I'm going to just do this selection. This is the selection I want to do. And I kind of want to make this kind of go up and maybe rotate it down a little bit and maybe a little bit down further. And like I say, there's really no exact perfect way to do this. It is just, you know, we're trying to get this general ergonomic shape, and so it's just a lot of very small changes. It's a lot of you know, clicking and dragging and moving multiple faces at once or one face at a time. There's quite a lot that you can get into. So that looks all right. I mean, I've done this a couple times now, and you know, other times it might look a little bit better. I'm going to kind of shrink this down a little bit thinner, kind of just to match a similar size as the one you see there. And you'll see that, you know, I can select multiple items. I can select one single item. If you want to select multiple items, just hold your Control or Command key. So on the front of this, maybe I want to get really specific, and actually what I want to do next is I want to delete these faces out of here, because that's going to help me kind of do this transition from this handle piece that I'm working on to the existing geometry in this model. So to do this, I'm going to just hold Control or Command, and I'm saying both because it's dependent on your operating system. If you're in a Mac operating system, it's Command. If you're in a Windows operating system, it's Control. So I'm going to hold Command in my case and select these two faces. And just like that, I'm going to hit the delete key, and that's going to delete those two faces out of there. And you can see that it's still trying to maintain the curvature continuity, so it actually kind of changed that a little bit. Changed the shape there. And so that looks all right, but I do think it's still extending a little bit too far, and I do want to try to match the shape a little bit closer to what we currently have in there, that kind of cylindrical shape. So let's go ahead and do some more changes to this geometry, and just double clicking on an existing edge, model edge, will actually get the whole loop. So I did it there for the end edge. If I do it again for the middle edge here, you'll see it does the same thing. I can select this one and it'll go along the full length there. So quite a lot of options there. It's really nice to be able to get those guys at the same time, because you do a lot of these kind of loop changes from time to time. So here I'm going to double click once again just to kind of get all those edges around the outside there. And then I want to shrink it down kind of in this direction to kind of match, get it closer to the size and shape of this guy. Maybe I want to stretch it out a little bit, and again, it's really just kind of playing and moving and altering things. You know, it's very flexible. If I wanted to, I could kind of drag these guys closer to one another. I could add symmetry at this point if I wanted to. You could just select two faces and it'll add the symmetry between them. But I think that's pretty close to what I want. It looks all right. We'll take a look at this a little bit more in a moment here, but what I want to do now is I want to connect the end of this handle to this existing hardware that we have in this door handle design. So to do that, I'm going to use a different tool. So I'm going to get out of this edit or modify dialog, and I'm going to come down to my drop down under modify, and what I'm looking for here is something that will help me convert an existing model edge to these B-rep or T-splines bodies or faces that we have this ability to alter in this design mode. So using convert, I'm going to select this button. You'll see you can convert, entire entities, bodies, existing, mesh bodies, etc. But in this case, I do just want to get one single face. I'm going to select this option, and then I'm going to select the face of the cylinder that you see here. Now, let's see here. I'm just going to rotate around and just verify. So in this case, what I was looking at there is I was looking at how many, faces go around the outside of this one, and there's 6, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in order to make this transition easier, in order this to happen a little bit smoother, I want the number of faces on this body that or this thing that I'm converting into a T-spline's body to have the same number here. So I'm going to increase the number here, and it's not actually length that I want to do here. I actually knew that was the wrong one there, so I'm going to change that to 1. I'm not going to be making changes on this guy, so I'm going to just put one single face along the length there, and then around the width I want to have 6 here. So once I have that, everything's good. I'm going to click OK. And just like that, we've actually converted an existing parametric design into one of these T-splines bodies, and this is going to enable me to make this connection here. So at this point, I'm going to double check, I'm going to jump into a different command here. I'm going to use the drop down under modify to jump into something else. And half of learning a new software is just understanding the names of certain commands, right? So this one took me a little while to figure out. It's called bridge. So bridge is how you will be able to create segments between two opposing faces or bodies. So again, use the tooltips. They're doing their best to tell you what to do. I sometimes don't have patience to read all those, but it's pretty short actually. So I'm going to click bridge, and what it's looking for is 2 sides, so side 1, side 2, and then it also gives you this ability to follow a curve, think like a guide curve or something. You can add twists, you can have a number of transitional faces. Here it's showing 3, but in this case I want to just go ahead and just double click on one side of this and then just change my selection to side 2, and then I'm going to double click on this one right here. So it's giving me a little warning here. We're going to go ahead and, it's just a warning, it's not telling me something's really wrong yet, but once I click OK, you'll see what it did there is it made this transition between these the best it knew, right? So I didn't give it a guide curve, so it just kind of went whatever direction it could have to go from point A to point B. And that's probably not the best looking handle, so I'm going to start to make a couple more changes here and try to get this to a better looking shape, right? So in this case, I did 3 faces. One of the options in there, I'm gonna back it up. I'm going to do that one more time. So I do also have my S key bring up my shortcuts, and bridge is one that I knew I was going to be using today, so I've added it to the shortcut list. And I'm going to check questions here. I just want to make sure we're still all hearing me and seeing me. Looks like we are. I did have a problem with one of my webinars where audio cut out, so I'm a little hesitant, a little worried there sometimes. But in this case, we'll do this one more time. What I want to draw your attention to is this one right here. This is the number of faces that we'll use to do this translation. So if I want 3, I can use 3. If I want to reduce that to 2, again, keeping it simple is always nice, we'll do 2, and then it makes that transition a little bit sharper. Maybe not the best for what I'm looking to do there. So at this point, I have a transition. It's all made of T-splines, bodies, and faces, and so I do have this amazing ability to make these changes, to make these transitions smoother. So let's just jump right back into Modify. Like I say, this is where you'll spend about 85% of your time in this tool. And a little difficulty getting it to rotate just right. I want you guys to see this well. And what I want to show you now is some of these additional options, and these additional options are accessible through these drop downs that you see here. You have the ability to use numerical inputs, you have the ability to grow or shrink bodies in different ways, quite a lot of options. You can invert your selection, that's kind of handy actually sometimes. These all have, most of these I should say, have keyboard shortcuts. You'll see it's actually telling me Control and L in that case, Control and P in that case. But the reason why I'm coming to this is actually this display mode. Now the default display mode that we're in right now is this smooth display style, and this is what this body will look like if you go and you know put it into some tooling and start to do some injection molding. This is what this part will actually look like. But in order for me to visualize this better, there's some different ways to visualize this or to change these display modes. I'm going to check this next one, and you'll see what it does is it puts these kind of boxy, this boxed display, I should say, around the outside of your body. This helps you visualize curvature changes so incredibly easy. So when I pulled that vertex out, for instance, or I think I pulled the edge actually, I pulled it pretty dramatically. It causes this pretty sharp change in curvature, and that might not be something that you want at all times, and that's something that this visual display will help me kind of deal with. So that's one way to display it. Another way is just the full box display. And I really like this display, and this is something that Mike Sagan, one of our experts in this tool, showed me. So this is what I want to do here. I want to use this display mode to make a couple changes. And once I'm done, I'm going to change back to this smooth display, and you'll see it does have a keyboard shortcut, which I will be using. Control 1, 2, 3 are the ones here. So first one I want to do here is I want to double click on this edge, and I want to rotate it. And I'm okay with this global coordinate system that it's using here because I just need to rotate it around this orientation. So when I rotate that, it looks a little bit smoother. I can also kind of drag it out one way, and I can drag it another way. And this is just going to help me kind of make this transition a little bit smoother. And what I want to watch for is just, anytime there's like a really sharp change in curvature. Like I'm not very fond of the way that this looks. So one thing I might be able to do is I could control select these two guys and kind of drag this out a little bit more. No, we'll go the other way, drag these in this way. Maybe I'll grab just a single vertex and slide it one way or the other, and just like I'm saying, there's a lot of just kind of manipulations that you're going to be getting into, and the more you can do this, the better it's going to look. And what I want to verify is that we're going to get this to look a little bit smoother here. So let's go ahead and change the display style back to smooth, and you'll see it looks much better in this display. But the real problem here is that I don't really have enough edges or faces along this transition, right? If I had more edges and faces, I'd actually be able to make this change a little smoother. So to do that, I'm going to add some edges, and this is something that is very important to know how to do. Like I say, keep it simple when you can, but add complexity as needed. So in this case, I do want to add some complexity. So I'm going to go to my Modify dropdown, and I'm going to find Insert Edge. You'll also see there's things like Slide Edge, Bevel Edge, Insert Point. Insert Edge is the one I'm looking for though, and maybe I'll just select this loop, just double click on the line there, and this is going to enable me to either drop in one single new edge, or I can go in both directions, and that's going to help me kind of split this difference and make this transition a little bit smoother. So let's click OK to this, and you'll see that when it did that, by adding the additional edges, it actually kind of changed the geometry a little bit. If that's something that you want to avoid, I just hit Control or Command Z to undo that. If that's something that you want to avoid, you can use that Insert Edge once again. But you'll see this one that I was toggling down, this is this insertion style. So simple will just add a new edge. It won't care about what the geometry currently is. If you change it to exact, it will save the exact same geometry that you're after and add those two edges. So most of the times you probably do want to use exact. Sometimes you don't want to use it because it will add additional edges in order to get this exact geometry that you're after. Anyway, using Edit Form, I'm going to kind of drag this down. I'm going to double click on this and rotate it a little bit, and I'm kind of just speeding up a little bit here just because I think I'm a little bit behind schedule there, but this is going to help me kind of get this transition a little bit better. And one thing that you might want to do is you might want to ensure that this comes out straight. One of the things that I probably should have done in this case was I should have frozen this first edge, right? If I wanted to maintain that same hardware, I could freeze the edges. That's one of these new tools that you have access to. When I go to freeze this, I can select a couple edges here, and you'll see that by freezing some of these faces here, and pardon my rotations, you can use the select other, click and hold, and it'll enable you to select through things, and I don't have to be rotating you every which way. I'm going to freeze these 6 edges around the outside. That's going to ensure that that doesn't change at all. Like that was probably something that I should have done when I first converted that to a B-rep body, so that it would maintain that exact geometry. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I do want to actually add some of that, creased styling to this that I was mentioning before. So I just want to mostly to show you guys how to do that. It's very simple to do. When I use the drop down under modify, you'll see the crease option, and with creasing you can crease these edges. So this is going to enable me to have sharp edges along maybe like one side of this model. So I'm going to just have a sharp edge along this front edge, and again, this is just some sort of styling that I want to do. I probably wouldn't keep it that sharp. When I go to manufacturing, I'd probably put some small fillet on it. Actually, once you're done with this, it'll act just like any parametric design. You can add fillets to it, you can do cuts into it, you do whatever you need to do, but that's going to help me kind of capture a little bit more of that design intent that I was after. And there we go. We have a pretty nice pretty nice might be an exaggeration. It's a okay looking door handle that I've made here. So I'll go ahead and click Finish Form. And when you finish with this, it's not quite a body, a solid body yet. So one way to just help you visualize that and verify that is to do maybe a little section analysis. So under Inspect, I can select my section analysis. And with this, sorry, let me do that one more time. Section analysis. We'll select some sort of face to use, and then I can click and drag this through. And you can see all these other bodies are all solids. They're all solid bodies. But as we get to the actual T-splines body that I've been working on, it's open. It's just an empty cavity right now because it's not capped off. I haven't actually created a solid from it. The reason for that is the end of this is actually open. I could very easily just put a patch on the other side there and really kind of focus in on that and make it a solid, but I can also do it in a couple different ways. The first way I want to, or the way that I'm going to be showing you, is I want to put a plane onto this face, and this is just going to help me put a cap on the end of this. So once I have that cap, I can use that to do what's called a boundary fill. So in this, I'm back in my normal modeling workspace. This is, you're going to see, I'm back to like combine and extrude, things like that. Boundary fill's an amazing tool. I use this all the time. I just use it to solve this problem I was struggling with to make actually the cavity for this next part you're going to be seeing, provided I haven't been blabbing too much. But boundary fill, you can select your sculpted surface body, if you will, and maybe that plane that I created. And then it's showing you where this cavity is found to be. So, or this cell as it's called here. So once you have those two items selected, make sure to change your selection to here. I have the issue of always just trying to click this toggle here. Make sure to just change the selection here, hit the toggle now, and now you're going to have a solid body from which to work with. So there we go. That looks pretty good. Like I say, it's all right for like 10-20 minutes of work. I've been doing a lot of talking mostly. So I'm pretty happy with that. So now we have a solid. We can actually go and like I say, we can make like a mold or something if we're gonna make this from maybe some cast material or something. But let's jump back into the PowerPoint. I kind of forgot that I had a PowerPoint at all. But let's just jump back into it, just kind of recap some of these things I wanted to make sure to talk about. Understanding the handles. Here I kind of break it down into the individual handle types. This is your translational handles. Sorry about that. Translational, rotational, and scaling style handles. The alternate and command keys. I was talking about using your command keys to actually do multiple selections. The alternate key on your keyboard does something entirely different. I want you to watch this video again from the beginning. So if you just click and translate a face normally, it'll just move it just like you see. If you hold alternate and click and drag on that, it'll actually start to add new faces to this. So that's a really cool way to make some very serious changes to your designs. It's really simple. Just hold alternate. Just need to know about that keyboard shortcut. Alternate, alternate, alternate. It'll add geometry. It's not going to just alter the geometry as you were seeing originally. The display settings, as I mentioned, makes it easier to visualize the curvature changes. We also have a number of visualization options, curvature combs, zebra stripes. I find this box display to be very handy. While the curvature, the curve display looks really nice a lot of the times, this will help you visualize those high curvature changes that a lot of times you want to try to avoid in designs like this. I did talk about these. I actually went through each one of these. Understanding the coordinate systems. The local coordinate is one that I use a lot. The view space is an interesting one. If you want to just get it to some crazy angle, then I could see that working well for you. Filtering is a handy tool as well, and I'm not going to cover all this stuff. This is some of those advanced options, and you may not need to get into that level just yet. Know your tools. In this case, I'm going to be showing, well, in this GIF that you see here, it's just doing some more of that bridging. But in this case, it was going from like a curved handle surface to like a flat surface rather than kind of that display that I had previously. Bridge and match are some of those advanced options. The crease option I showed a little bit of. Flattening and pull, those are some more options that you have, and again, I just don't have time to cover all these. I didn't really get into how freeze works. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. In this GIF that I've created here, I'm going to show you what it does. Like, I created this iron. I've been using it quite a lot actually, and maybe I was really happy with the way the handle looked, but I want to make changes to the other bodies without affecting the handle. By freezing that handle, by freezing those patches or faces, it enables me to continue to make these changes to the rest of this model, but it's going to ensure that I don't change something that I'm satisfied with. When you freeze, by the way, you'll notice that I'm only selecting these first couple faces. It actually gets these ones as well, and that's because if these faces begin to change, it'll affect these faces. That's why inserting additional edges might fix that. That's why understanding how this curvature continuous kind of workspace reacts is important. So just be aware of that. It's some nice options. It's a pretty handy one to use. Once you're happy, or if you get to a point where you're dissatisfied with the faces that you've frozen, you can always go back and unfreeze them, by the way. So always good to be able to undo something. Now, this last part, I did just want to talk about Fusion 360 and the fact that it's pretty much the only tool available right now where you can go from doing industrial design to the mechanical design to all the way through tooling and actually cutting your parts. So that handle that you saw is actually part of this Ember printer that Autodesk made. We make that handle as a part of a demonstration. Here I'm showing you, once you get the general shape, you're not done, right? I mean, if you're going to be injection molding this, you need to thin it out, you need to shell it. If you want to add some bolts, or if you want to, not bolts, I should say, just if you want to screw these things together, if you're going to be molding it in two separate halves, you're going to add some bolt holes. You can add ribs and things to strengthen a plastic part. So that's what I've done with the second imagery here. And then you can get into actually creating tooling. So I mean, this is only showing cavity and core. There's obviously a lot more that goes into injection molding. By the way, this part is not going to be molded very easily or well with that edge down there. So obviously, you know, there's a lot of things that I'm skipping there, but I'm just showing you you can do all these different types of designs in Fusion 360. At the end of the day, you can go and actually do your CAM toolpaths and start cutting these parts, making this tooling, and go to production. I didn't actually talk about simulation. Simulation is actually something that I care quite a lot about. It was what I focused on previously, but that's another option available to you. But I think that just about does it for my presentation today. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I hope you learned some stuff. I do know that I have some questions I'm going to need to get to there. I will stay on the line while those are going on. I'll try to answer them, the ones that I think pertain to everybody. Otherwise, I'll send you emails directly. Make sure that you go to our learning website. It has quite a lot of content. I was mentioning today, you know, half of the quick tips I do are related to questions that I get in sessions like this. Our quick tips are released on YouTube. They're released on our blog. The one today I made, I was pretty proud of it. It's talking about how you can use the insert from McMaster Carr as well as SVG manipulation creation, and using that to do things like create logos or emboss or deboss text into your designs. Take a look at our YouTube channel. There's a lot of built-in tutorials. If you have any questions, that's my Twitter handle. Fire away, or use the actual dialogue here in this GoToWebinar interface, and I'll definitely get back to you. So, thanks everyone.